could have your attention so we could begin the speaking portion. Just want to welcome all of you here this morning. Great morning. Boston Bruins in 7. All right, okay. We're bringing it home. So I want to thank all of the Politics and Egg sponsors. You see the banners here, and they're the ones that provide the breakfast here at no cost to all of us. So if you see any of the members, they're all corporate leaders here in New Hampshire and New England, and they're very generous to the Politics and Eggs. But it's the only venue I know where you could go and see the major candidates running for President of the United States at a venue like this, and it's free, the breakfast, and it's possible because of all these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful supporters that we have. Speaking of supporters, I also want to thank the New Hampshire Institute of Politics for being such incredible partners with the New England Council, as we have co-hosted the Politics for many, many, many years. Needless to say, it's been a very busy cycle so far, with a very crowded field. We look forward to spending more time here at St. A's in the months ahead. In fact, we'll be here tomorrow for a breakfast with another Democratic candidate. It's Congressman Tim Ryan of Ohio. The New England Council also has several other events that we have planned in the next couple of weeks, including a breakfast in Portland, Maine with Senator Susan Collins on the 14th of June. On the 17th of June, we have the newly elected congressman from the 2nd Congressional District in Maine, Jared Golden. And then finally, on June 27th, we have the governor, the newly elected governor of Maine, Janet Mills, who will be speaking to the New England Council. So we'll have many more events coming up in the weeks and months ahead. We hope that many of you who are members of the New England Council will participate. So now, it's my pleasure to introduce, I mentioned earlier about the Institute of Politics. The Institute of Politics is really Neil Levesque, and he is my good friend. He's the executive director. He has done an outstanding job in elevating the importance and the significance of this program, and he has been a great, great partner with the New England Council. We're blessed to have him. So for purposes of introducing, giving a formal introduction to the United States Senator, give a warm, warm appreciation to Neil Levesque.
He said, just don't mess up. That's what he said. What a great crowd we have this morning. I know some of you are up late, so it's very impressive to have a full room here for Politics and Eggs. We have a great partnership with the New England Council. We've been doing a lot of things with them over the years. Larry and Jim, and many of the friends who are in this room, we have put on some outstanding, really New Hampshire events, and this is one of them, obviously. I'm very, very pleased today to introduce Senator Amy Klobuchar. She's serving her 3rd term, of course, from Minnesota. Before that, she was a county attorney in the most populous county in her state, and the chief prosecutor there, and before that, a corporate attorney. Some of you will have that in common with her, of course. She and her husband, John, who is right here with her, travels the country. They have one child, Abigail. And really interesting, I thought this was very interesting, is that the senator actually got into politics when she was released, sort of forced out of the hospital after giving birth to Abigail. And Abigail had a couple complications, and it was really not good that she had to leave the hospital. She got very involved in her state. She passed a mandatory 48 hours for new mothers to stay in hospitals in the state of Minnesota. And later, Bill Clinton signed into law that national federal law. And a lot of it has to do with the senator here today. Regrettably, she did not attend St. Anselm College. She went to Yale University and the University of Chicago, where she got her JD. She's on the Judicial Committee, Commerce, Agricultural, and Rules, where she is the ranking member. I want to make special note before she comes up that at the end of the 114th Congress, Senator Klobuchar had passed more legislation than any other senator. Says something in this environment. Senator Klobuchar.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I've heard all about politics and eggs my whole life in politics, so it is so great to be here with all of you. I actually took photos of Mitt Romney with the eggs in front of him out there in the green room, and I already emailed them to him to show I was here. He's been giving me advice here and there. And it is great to be here with you, Jim. Thank you, and thanks, Neil, for that nice introduction. Lou, where are you? Lou, who wrote the Bible about how to run for president. Thank you for that. Shannon is here. Shannon Shandley, where are you? Right over there. State Senator. Joe Foster, Attorney General. Did everyone know it's his birthday today? What a great way to celebrate his birthday. And then we have former New Hampshire Attorney General Michael Delaney is out there somewhere. Thank you for being here. Kathy Sullivan, when I first spoke at the New Hampshire Democratic dinner. Thank you, the former chair. And then also David Alward, who's the consul to Canada. Where are you? Since we can see Canada from our porch, we love Canada and Minnesota. I actually head up the Canadian American group in the Senate, and I go there almost every year. So it's great to see you. And the British Council, I think, is here too somewhere. There she is. Thank you very much. And also Judy Reardon, thank you. The Senior Advisor Council, former to Jean Shaheen. My state director of my campaign, Scott Merrick, who used to work for Jean Shaheen, is doing an incredible job for me. His girlfriend, Michaela, is here. I'm only introducing her because she just graduated from law school, so keep her in mind. Where are you, man? Okay, so they've been dating for 5 years, and so I've got the whole story in the back room about how they met in a very romantic setting while they were both working for Jeannie, and it was during a Martin O'Malley speech. Okay? So I'm hoping something else will happen while he's working for me, so that's all good. We're going to keep that in mind. And then, of course, my husband, John Bessler, right here. Thank you. We missed the Bruins game, although we're very happy for you because we were in Iowa and coming back here. But I am a big hockey fan, of course, state of Minnesota. I will note, I know there's probably Red Sox fans here, but perhaps you've noticed the best team in baseball is the Minnesota Twins. So we're pretty excited. They're kind of a Cinderella operation, and we're excited. I was at those World Series when they won, and they're a really fun team to watch. So it is wonderful to be here, as I said. I love speaking to people in New Hampshire. My ever etched in my memory of what it is like to speak in New Hampshire was when our family spent the weekend, Easter weekend here, and went up to Mount Washington, and we just had a really nice family trip. End up in Walpole, and we were at a church on Easter Sunday. In the middle of the service, when I get introduced, this kid, he's 11 years old, and he comes over and gets my autograph, and I'm like, okay. And then his name's Quinn. And then the next day at Peterborough, when we had our town hall, the kid raises his hand. This is a true story. He is 11 years old, and he's like, I'd like to know if Bob Mueller testifies, if he should go before the House or Senate first, and should he be at the Intelligence Committee or Judiciary? So New Hampshire, he's like 11 years old. So that's why I love your state. Something else in common, we love the outdoors in our states, and that same weekend, we had a great hiking trip, our family, and managed to go in a state park up a rather, I will say, instead of using the main road, we went on some rocks and ice, and I was so happy. What's the name of the park? Oh, Packmanabnock. Yes, almost there. Yeah, okay. And we go up there, and they say in a very nice New Hampshire way, well, the road is blocked off, so you might want to be careful there. They blocked the road off. So I think what they meant, you could walk on the road but not drive. We take the trail, and it's like literally, I thought I'm going to fall over on this ice and everything. We get to the top, and there's these senior citizens up there. Why didn't you take the road? What's wrong with you? Anyway, we love it. I love your two senators, Maggie and Jeannie. We're very good friends. We are two of the only states in the country that have both women senators, which is very cool. You have such a strong history of women. And my favorite story of Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire in my early days was when Jeannie got to the Senate. We sat next to each other for a long time, and I told her the story of how I had requested Hubert Humphrey's desk when I got to the Senate. I was so excited finally because we all have these matching desks and people sign their names in them, and it's what you know. And I remember when I got it, before she got there, I opened up the desk to look for Hubert Humphrey's name, and they had accidentally given me Gordon Humphrey's desk. It was a true story. So I had this Gordon Humphrey desk. I had learned by then, pick your battles. I'll deal with this later. So when Jeanne came, I tell her the story, and she goes, well, how do you know it's Gordon Humphrey's desk? I said, because they signed their names in it. And so I lifted it up. It's a new Congress, right, to show her. And as I did, I realized they'd given me a new desk, and I had and still have Hubert Humphrey's desk. So it's a very cool story. The other thing that our states have in common is a strong sense of independent voters, right? And if you don't believe me about Minnesota, I have 3 words for you: Governor Jesse Ventura. All right, so getting to what my endeavor is at this very moment. I'm happy, by the way, to be in a room where no one else is running for president. Very cool. But tell me if you are. That would be good to know. But I announced my candidacy in a major blizzard. And we could have taken it inside, but I decided I wanted to make the point in a New Hampshire fashion that I have grit, that I'm coming from a different place and running for this office. I don't have a lot of money. I'm someone that has been an underdog in several races, but always won every single one. And I also wanted to make the point by announcing by that river that it is time to cross the river of our divides to get to a higher plane in our politics. As was mentioned, when I first got involved in politics, it was about grit, and that was that story of getting kicked out of the hospital after 24 hours while our daughter was in intensive care. They thought she had a tumor. We didn't know what was wrong, and I had been up all night, and it was a pretty horrendous experience that a lot of people were having at that same time. For some people, it's fine, but when you have a kid that's sick and it's your first baby, it was a ridiculous situation. And so after she got a little better, I went over to the legislatures. I wasn't in elected office as a mom, and advocated for this new rule to get a 48-hour hospital stay. And a few things that I learned from that is that if you talk about things it was mostly men in the legislature at that time, and so if you talk about things like episiotomies, they're so embarrassed. They're like, okay, we'll pass a law. We don't want to hear about this. And the second thing, the second thing that I learned was when we got to the conference committee, some of the people, no one could oppose it, but they wanted to delay the implementation, and by quite a bit, like 2 years. And so I brought 6 pregnant friends of mine to the conference committee. And so when the legislators said, well, when should this take effect? You know, they all go, no. And so they moved up the effective date from August 1st to the date the governor signed it. So that was my first lesson in politics. My background is a little different than some of the other candidates, and certainly the Donald Trumps. My grandpa was an iron ore miner. He worked 1,500 feet underground his whole life. He had wanted to be in the Navy, but he had to quit school before he was even in high school, actually, to go to work because he had 9 brothers and sisters. He was the oldest boy from an immigrant family, and his parents died shortly thereafter. One kid was brought to an orphanage in Duluth, and he had to go and get her. He said he would in 2 years, and he did that. Married my grandma. They raised those kids, and then my dad and his brother. And education was their future. And so my grandpa literally saved money in a coffee can in the basement to have enough money to send my dad to a 2-year community college, which is why I'm such a believer in those degrees and different paths to success that people can have. And there from then, my dad finished up at the University of Minnesota and was a journalist his whole life. He's now 91. My mom grew up in Milwaukee, also without a lot of money, daughter of Swiss immigrants, and she wanted to be a teacher. She came to Minnesota because they had strong teachers union. She was a strong teachers union member, and she taught 2nd grade till she was 70 years old. And I still have people talk to me about how she was their favorite teacher. And her favorite thing she taught was the monarch butterfly unit, where she would dress up as a monarch with antennas and carry a sign that said "To Mexico or Bust." And she would wear that grocery shopping afterward, which I never quite understood, except that she thought it was funny until a week after she died at the visitation. This mom came up to me and she's crying, and she has this older son next to her who was very disabled. And she says, "This is my son, and he had your mom in second grade, and he loved her, and he loved the most that butterfly unit." So every year after he graduated, years and years later, he got a job bagging groceries at the Super Value. So every year your mom taught the unit, when she wore the outfit, she would come over to that store, get her groceries, stand in his line, and give him a hug. So that was my mom. And I stand before you today as the granddaughter of an iron ore miner, as the daughter of a teacher and a newspaperman, as the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate from the state of Minnesota, and a candidate for President of the United States. That is what this country to me is about, that no matter where you come from, no matter who you know, that you can make it in America, that we are a country of shared dreams. And I am so concerned every single day. It doesn't start before I made the decision, after I made the decision, about what this president is doing to fracture that community. You think of what you have going here in New Hampshire. You don't all agree politically on things, but people come together for your state. They come together to discuss politics in a civil way. You are a model for the nation in that way, but yet every day in destruction of our civic life, this president tweets out mean stuff about immigrants, about people of color, about people in his own party when they don't agree with him, maybe even on one issue, or he sends out a doctored video, which for those of you who are in politics or teach political science understand what this means beyond that Nancy Pelosi video, because he is basically condoning what we are most fearful of, everyone involved in politics, that we're going to break down into this on either side, which is not just fake news, but literally fake videos of people's faces and their bodies saying things that people will believe that are complete lies. And it's one of the scariest things that's coming our way in politics, and yet we have someone in the White House that actually sent this out. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying fracturing our civic life, which people, no matter if they're Democrats, Independents, or Republicans, just cannot allow to continue in this country. And I believe we need to restore and revive the heart of our democracy and the heart of our politics and the heart of America, which is what my agenda and the focus of my campaign has been all about. So I am talking about the issues that I think are our challenges coming our way. You know, we had that downturn 10 years ago, and we got out of it. I was just talking to a woman who's delightful, who maybe just did a little makeup for me before I came out here, about her story about how she got divorced 10 years ago, and then she decided right in the middle of that downturn she was going to pull herself up, right? And so she started, not only did she have her work she did with makeup, but she also had real estate. She started investing at a good time, and she was just so proud of being a woman entrepreneur. And you think of that story that's told over and over again in this country, from businesses, small and large. It was businesses that were willing to hang in. It was employees that were willing to hang in during that time, and we got out of that downturn. And now we are at this point of stability. But when you're president of the United States, you just don't rest on your laurels and gloat about how it's going. You look at the challenges that are in front of us right now. Because otherwise, just like any of you at businesses understand, then you can't move ahead to the next challenge if you're not getting ready for it. So what are the challenges in front of us right now? Well, we have the challenge of, I'll just lead with this since we did a major discussion on this here, we have this challenge of infrastructure, right? It's maybe not the sexiest thing. I was on Cuomo's show, Chris Cuomo's show, and when I rolled out this package and talked about how he's going to pay for it and everything, he says, generations of Cuomos have run on this and lost. I'm like, that is not really true. They just decided not to run for president. Give me a break. But in fact, it is something, a bread and butter issue that brings people together where we know our nation is falling behind. Your mayor is here somewhere, or was here, your Manchester mayor, thank you. And we were talking about the Capital Rail project and how important that is to this area. In fact, you have the most people of any area in the country that doesn't have commuter rail, and that's just wrong. We have to be able to respond to what we need, and what you need here, just like actually in my state, you need more workers to be able to come up and fill the jobs and match that entrepreneurial spirit that you have in your state that you've been known for having for so long. You need to make it easier for people to come back and forth. You've got a great tourism industry here that could be even greater if there was more access. You have great education institutions here, so you want to make it easier. You've got more and more young people that don't maybe want to have a car to get to their job, or they want to bike, or they want to get places differently in this new generation. And so all this is about matching the infrastructure so it matches where we are right now. And that's why I led with that project, in addition to making the point when I made my announcement that I was 1.5 miles away from that bridge that collapsed in the middle of a beautiful summer day, which is only 8 blocks from our house. That's a bridge that we drive every day with our family. And then one day, for various reasons, that bridge just fell down and 13 people died, right? And you saw the community that came together afterward. But more than anything, it was a story about infrastructure. And so that's why I led with that infrastructure package, because it's just, there's so many Republicans that want to work on it. I know we can get it done. And it's just an example of things that are challenges that we're not meeting, that Donald Trump could have met when they did that tax bill, right? I didn't vote for it. I had some serious problems with it. But if you could have combined it, maybe not gone down quite as much with those corporate taxes, he went to 25%. I went to 21%. If you went to 25%, each point, that would have still been a significant reduction, was $100 billion. Think of how much that would have bought for this rail project here and for other infrastructure projects. So that's one thing I'd say. Add to that rural broadband, cell phone service, which I've noticed in parts of New Hampshire doesn't always work. My husband was trying to think of a New Hampshire example last night as we were going through what I was going to say, and he noted, this is his joke so he can suffer through it. He said, your state motto is live free or die, but if you're going to die, at least you want to try to prevent it from happening by calling someone on your cell phone, and if it doesn't work, you got a real problem. Okay, it didn't go over that well, just to be very clear. Last time we try that one, buddy. Okay, all right, but the point of it is that that there are still issues in this country. You've got, Iceland is wired for broadband, the entire country, right? I've been there. It's because, of course, that's a vacation for people from Minnesota. But it is wired everywhere, and we have to find a way to do that. And there is a way. I'm on the Commerce Committee. I know how we can get this done by 2022. Another challenge: income inequality. And that is this simple idea that we're not going to be a strong economy if people aren't able to participate in it, right? You can manufacture as many things as you want, but if people can't buy them, we're going to have a problem. And to me, that means some of the changes to the taxes, especially that last tax bill. It means making sure we're not leaving this debt on the shoulders of those in front of us. It's going to take a long time to deal with it, but I think we can do it. As my friend Angus King from your neighboring state of Maine says, it took us 30 years to walk into that woods, and it's going to take us a long time to walk out. But there are ways to think about this in terms of our spending, and most significantly in terms of our taxes. I would say the next big goal is education changes. And the president has talked a good game when it comes to community colleges and the degrees you need, which, as I noted, is near and dear to my heart with apprenticeships. But it was such an opportunity coming out of the downturn to make that a big priority, to figure out how we can give incentives to states to make apprenticeships and those one-year degrees and those certifications and things that fill the jobs that we have open right now that are actually in many cases quite well paying, and trying to incentivize students to go into that work. And so that's a major thing that I want to do. Coming from my own sister didn't graduate from high school. She ended up getting a GED after working in manufacturing for quite a while, and then she got a 2-year degree at a community college. She got a 4-year degree and got the best score at that year in the state of Iowa on her accounting exam, and she's now been gainfully employed as an accountant ever since. Just an example that there are many paths to success. Another piece of this is immigration reform and making sure that, again, we have enough workers. I look at this, the president seems to look at it as just about a wall, and I see it as an economic necessity. You look at the past of America, where so many of our entrepreneurs were immigrants, right? 70 of our Fortune 500 companies right now are headed up by people born in other countries. 25% of our U.S. Nobel laureates were born in other countries. Immigrants don't diminish America, they are America. And to me, the solution is right there before us with comprehensive immigration reform, something we passed, and yet now even both Jean and Maggie and I were in the group that tried to work out the Dreamers Compromise with Senator Rounds and Isaacson and several others, and we actually had a compromise. It was not easy. There were about 14 of us in a room for weeks, and then we got gut punched, especially the Republicans did, by the White House. We couldn't even get a plan to keep the Dreamers there that are very popular with the public. They didn't come over here, no fault of their own, but they made that impossible to do, and I just see that as, especially in states like yours with the low unemployment rate, and especially for small businesses, when you look at the national employment figures and where people are moving, it just sets us back. And that's why comprehensive reform is the answer. And for those fiscally careful people in New Hampshire, which you are, listen to this figure. If you've learned one thing today, learn this. The 2013 Senate bill got scored by the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. It brings the debt down by $158 billion in 10 years. That is why Grover Norquist made it his top priority that year. I called Grover Norquist as a witness to our Joint Economic Committee as a positive witness to talk about the economic benefits of doing immigration reform the right way, because people come out of the shadows, they pay taxes, you have more workers, it helps small businesses. The unions were for this because you have more people that aren't just working under in the shadow. So it was the way to go, and it would have been a big help, and we can still do it now. And I think that's one of those challenges that's just sat there that no one has done anything about. Another challenge, health care. And you have, for many things you can do right away. The cost sharing, this is on the premium side, the cost sharing and the reinsurance. Jean has a good bill on the cost sharing piece of this, and it's worked in red states like Alaska to help bring down immediately some of the premiums. And then you can move to a public option, which is something President Obama wanted to do at the beginning with either Medicare or Medicaid to create more competition. Taking on pharmaceutical prices, which literally have been just left on their own to be able to, from my mind, do pretty much whatever they want. And the results have been escalating pharmaceutical prices for Americans to a point where insulin has gone from $18 a vial to $1,200 a month. We had a restaurant general manager in a suburban restaurant in the Twin Cities who, once he aged out of his parents' insurance at age 26, couldn't afford his own insulin, and he started rationing it, and it was only 2 months and he died while he was working as a general manager at a restaurant for a drug that used to cost nothing, has not been improved. And you can see those stories over and over and over again in terms of what's happening with costs. So I'm not going to go into all my remedies on that, but I am the lead on the Medicare negotiation. That has been my bill since I got to the Senate. Senator Grassley and I, this was a bill I used to have with Senator McCain until we sadly lost him, and it was to bring in less expensive drugs from other countries. Thank you, Canada. And then also, and it would create competition, that's the idea. Or maybe you could do it if there wasn't enough competitors in a market. And then maybe that would make them not raise their prices that much if you had a trigger, and that's what we do with drug shortages, that if there's drug shortages, then you can bring in safe competitors from other countries. And then the third idea is to stop pay for delay, which is another bill I have with Senator Grassley, which would stop pharma from paying off generics to keep their products off the market. Last thing I just want to mention with healthcare, and I was in Nashua, which was an amazing visit to the Revive Recovery Center, and what you have battled with here with addiction and opioids is you've been carrying the burden way beyond the size of your state. And that, and seeing it in my own state, having it in my own life with my dad, having been an alcoholic, having had 3 DWIs, and finally the third one, after he's been such a successful journalist, was the one where he was facing jail time, and he had to make a choice of jail or treatment, and he chose treatment. And in his words, because of his faith, his family, and that basic tough love that came from the government, he was pursued by grace, and he got to get his life together. And now he's 91, and as he said to me a few months ago, it's hard to get a drink in this assisted living place anyway. But actually, his AA group still visits him. So that's why I have made this and mental health major priorities. And there is a way to pay for this. And if you notice, I always talk about how I'm going to pay for everything. I think if you're running for president, you better have real ideas, real solutions to real problems, and show how you're going to pay for it. You can check it out on our website, how we're doing this, but it involves the pharma lawsuits and then with the ones that are creating this drug. And then you can use some of the funding as well for mental health. We do not have enough mental health beds. We've had a big increase in suicide. Last 2 things I want to mention as big challenges in front of us: climate change. I think having a voice from the heartland on this will help, in addition to talking about the rising sea levels. This is also about the flooding we're seeing in the Midwest, the fires raging in places like Colorado. I would sign us back into the International Climate Change Agreement on day 1, and bring back the clean power rules and the gas mileage standards and the other things that we need to do. And just the last challenge, because I want to get to some questions, is making sure our democracy is working. And to me, that means doing what we've tried to do in our states, which is to make it easier for people to vote and not harder for them to vote. And I know there have been some challenges here on that in the past as well. But when you think of what happened in Georgia, where 53,000 ballots were held back by a Secretary of State that was running for governor, when many of the reasons were because of the hyphens in the name didn't match, or a signature that was scrawled didn't match. That's not democracy, when you're going out of your way to try to deny people the right to vote. Or in Texas, where there was so much news going on with Donald Trump, calling for boycotts of major American companies on foreign soil, and calling the Duchess nasty, and the London mayor, well, I won't go into everything, Cold Stone loser. But as all of that was going on, people missed the fact that the Texas Secretary of State resigned because of a scheme and a fraud he'd been in to keep people off the voter rolls. It was that bad. He resigned. So this is going on all over the country, and I think we're going to have to, what I'd like to do as president, make this a major priority. If you've got the right chemistry in the Congress, you could literally pass my bill to register every kid to vote when they turn 18, if they're eligible, and start looking at it as how do we bring more people into the democracy, then shut them out, reform some of this campaign finance, and galvanize. It may take a constitutional amendment, but you could overturn Citizens United with a constitutional amendment, which is what I think we should do. So my last thing, we need to win. For those of us in this room that think that is a priority, I will make my case. I have won every place, everywhere, and every time I have run. And that includes against people that were expected to win. That includes 2 major races where I was outfunded. That includes my race in high school for secretary of my student council, where my campaign slogan was "All the way with Amy Kay," which I'm not going to be using anymore. And has been pointed out, I also have 100 bills that were signed into law where I was the lead Democrat, including the big school safety law that we did recently, and including 34 bills signed into law when Donald Trump was president, but I think he didn't notice, so that happened. But I, in the end, think that we need someone that can win across the country, that understands after we have been tormented, our democracy has been tormented by someone that doesn't seem to value what brings us together is bigger than what tears us apart. And I believe that my way of doing work and bringing people together as I have is going to be a big, big remedy for that. And that means not only in how I run this campaign, which has included not just going where it's comfortable, but always where it's uncomfortable as well, which is how I've won 42 Trump counties last time and every congressional district in my state, including Michelle Bachmann's. Every single time I have done that, and I've done it by not just going after people, but by trying to bring people together. And I think that's a message not just for how you campaign, but for how you govern. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Good.
We have time for a few questions, and we have some students here with the mic.
Great.
So if you could just identify yourself. I can just ask the first question. Senator, the president threatened to put a tariff, 5% a month up until 25%, which would be October, on goods coming in from Mexico. We seem to be having so much discussions about tariffs all over the world. We've had them on Canada with aluminum and steel. New England, number one and number two exporter is Canada. We have a trade bill in Washington that doesn't seem to be getting that much support and passage. Your thoughts on how we're going to go forward to get a meaningful trade bill passed?
All right, and I'm still looking at that trade bill, but I will. The issue here is just how this president has handled working with the rest of the world. You know, if you just try to isolate yourself and put your head in the sand, you miss the opportunities that come knocking at your door. And if you're not careful, as we've seen with some of these security issues, they're going to come banging at your door. And I don't like how he's handled the world. I think we should be standing with our allies. I think it's pretty hard to piss off entire country of Canada. That's an exaggeration, but it happened. The council can't say anything. But, and I actually, right after the G7, I led a group of senators, and we went up there because of my work to talk to the members of Canadian Parliament. And then when it looked like Canada was going to be left out of that trade deal, I arranged a dinner with 15 of us, went over to the Canadian Embassy, including some very prominent Democrats and Republicans, to talk to the ambassador, to talk through the issues, to continue to push the White House to include Canada in that agreement. And like New Hampshire for Minnesota, it's also our top trading partner. So I understand how important that is, as well as border issues and access and making sure that our border infrastructure, by the way, that's something Cornyn and I got passed to allow private money to match public money for the Mexico and Canada borders to make that easier, to have commerce go back and forth and still be safe. The tariffs in general, I thought what happened with Mexico and the way he used that on the immigration issue was just not a good thing. It wasn't a good precedent for the future. It was completely unrelated to trade. And then what do we find out? We find out in a headline in the New York Times that actually most of that agreement had been made before he tweeted out that he had gotten this miraculous save of an agreement in response to a crisis that he had created. So call me skeptical about that claim. But I think in general, when you kind of step back from the whole thing, I don't think, having just been in Iowa and my own state, that the farmers of the Midwest or the workers in New Hampshire should be poker chips, which he appears to be using them in some kind of game from one of his bankrupt casinos. I think that you've got to do trade in a tough way. That is true. I'm not against using tariffs in a targeted way. We had a problem with steel dumping, and in the last few years of the Obama administration, I brought Dennis McDonough, the president's chief of staff, to northern Minnesota. They started upping their enforcement of the steel dumping laws, and it made a major difference. And we started opening up our iron ore mines again because of the fact that they took it seriously, and they weren't taking it seriously enough before. That's an example of very targeted work going on at a specific thing with some specific countries. And yes, China is someone that has been a country that has been stealing intellectual property, subsidizing their industries, so it creates an uneven playing field when it comes to trade. And so the answer is, of course, to work with our allies as a group to take this on, not to do everything alone, and then to go back to the negotiating table and try to get an answer. Because we've got literally, just to bring it back, I know there's lobster issues in Maine that are huge. I've been talking to Angus about that, and I'm sure you'll hear about that from Susan. But just that Midwestern story of these soybean farmers. We had a soybean farmer in northern Minnesota this is even before some of these tariffs came in place, but he just couldn't make it. He committed suicide. It was because of the commodity prices going down. The farm had been in his family for generations, and he felt he was letting down his ancestors, basically, because he couldn't make it. And now, these guys really don't want those handouts, and let me explain why. Their market's going to dry up because who buys their soybeans, they're going to be buying them from farmers in other countries. And they're not just going to be buying them once. They're going to start getting 1-year and 2-year contracts. So that's a concern as this goes on and on and on, is that in addition to the chaos it creates in certain markets for business and customers, it is also going to then create different supply chains and purchasing chains that will have a long-term impact that we're really not going to be able to measure right now. And you can't just keep putting taxpayer money, year after year into this. The better solution is to allow the market and people to sell their goods to market. Okay? Okay?
From AARP.
Very good. Heard of it? No, I'm kidding.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you.
I'm Alan Cohn from AARP. If nothing is done to Social Security, benefits will be cut by 25% in 2034.
Yeah, 2035, I think it was, but yes.
What
Yes.
plans specifically do you have to take a good hard look at Medicare to prevent such cut?
Exactly. Well, thank you. And I have been opposed, as you know, to these schemes to privatize it. And I think that both Social Security and Medicare have been some of the best programs that we have, and they both have to stay in place. Different things for different programs. For Social Security, I favored lifting the cap, maybe using a donut hole to make sure that it has the funds that it needs and making sure we don't raid the Social Security money we have. I'd also add there to look at something that Chris Coons and I just put out to supplement for people that are at companies, especially good for small businesses that don't have 401ks, something called Up Savings Account. We have 49 million Americans that have no savings right now. That's a lot. In addition, all they have is Social Security. They have nothing else. And so the idea is to try to adjust to this gig economy where you have people that are working more jobs, they're combining jobs, they don't have any kind of pension, of course, much less 401k. And so the idea here would be to have a 50 cents an hour that an employer contributes. It would be opt-out, not opt-in. There would be tax credits, some of it paid for by some changes to that tax bill that just passed, so that it's easier for small businesses to afford it. And then the first $2,500 every single year could be taken out without penalty for emergency expenses that have to be verified, because 4 out of 10 Americans right now do not have $400 to pay for an emergency room visit, and it puts them back, and then you start getting in this cycle. And you can take these accounts with you. It's estimated at the end of a working career you'd have saved like $600,000. So I just throw that out there as we need to get some innovative ideas that I'm sure we'll hear in New Hampshire as I go around. And tell Scott if you have any about this retirement issue with the new economy that we're in. As far as Medicare, I think it is important to keep Medicare strong, as I've noted. Some of this is making sure that we continue to make our healthcare system work better. I am all in for high quality, low cost care. Jean actually took me to Dartmouth Hitchcock a few years back to talk to them because they've actually combined with Mayo, my home state, to do a lot of work in cost-effective care and what we can do there, looking at results, right, as our goal. And that was the whole idea of the accountable care organizations and other things out of the Affordable Care Act. And that's good for Medicare, that's good for everyone if we're able to do that. And I just think we need to do everything we can to make our healthcare system in general more affordable. A big part of this is what I led with before, pharmaceutical prices, and nearly 20% of our healthcare expenses when you include hospital pharmaceuticals. And as you can imagine, the pharmaceuticals are high-end on the senior end, and so that would make a big difference when it comes to Medicare and unleashing the power of 43 million seniors to be able to negotiate prices. I have a few other ideas, but we'll take some other questions. Thank you.
Other questions? There's time for maybe two more questions. Let me just take the young lady in the back. Tess? You a student here at St. A?
No. Thank you. I'm Tess Kenning. I work with the community health centers, both in Vermont, New Hampshire, and all across the nation. And I wanted to pick up on what you said about the soybean farmer and access to rural care, especially medical and oral health, but also mental health care. The health centers see 28 million people across the nation. They could double that number and see 60 million to help with mental health care in rural areas, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. So this community health care is something that just the last few years we've tried to beef up. It was something that Debbie Stabenow and Roy Blunt in the Senate put together, and they're looking at expanding it now. There's pilots all across the country to have mental health community health centers, basically. So that's one thing I'd mention. The second is just this problem with beds. We have many states in the country that just don't have enough mental health beds. We went from this state-based mental health system to a community-based mental health system. And there's some real advantages to that. It was well-intended. It was the right thing to do. But as the Attorney General probably knows, we then don't have enough help often financially in our communities to deal with it. I've been in hospitals in my state where they've got a guy locked up in a room with a cop in front of him full time because they don't know what to do. They don't know where to transfer him to. Those kinds of things happen every day in America. So this idea is to have more beds, to have more counselors in the schools, to have more for rural especially, which is what you raised, the ability to have at least someone with mental health expertise out there pushing on the mental health parity issue. That was a bill that was passed several years ago, and Paul Wellstone of my state was one of the big authors of that bill, the lead Democrat, and there's been issues about how that's been implemented. The idea that if you're physically sick, you should be able to get help. Well, same thing if you have a mental illness. So I just think when 1 out of 5 Americans are dealing with mental illness, and are you ready for this stat? This is unbelievable. Another good thing for you to remember. 30% increase in suicides in 15 years in America. So it's not just stories you're hearing on the news. It's really happening right now that we have to figure out. Some of it is the isolation of our age where everyone's looking at the internet and there's more bullying going on because of it. Some of it is not the access that people should have. Some of it is the combination with opioids and things like that. But it's a very sad thing. And we should be stepping back and figuring out how we're going to reverse that trend. Right?
One final question.
Okay. Then I've got sort of a Red Sox related story I'm going to end with. Okay.
Hi, Senator. How are you? I'm
great.
Thank you. You mentioned something about climate change. You said that you would re-enter the Paris Accord and would reinstitute
the Clean Power rules that Obama had put forward that were actually a many-year project to work to make sure that it was realistic, we could get it done, and then Trump didn't put them in place.
Right.
Yes.
Beyond those, do you have any specific ideas or,
Sure.
or what your approach would be to address climate change?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the reason I raised those three things at the beginning, the climate change agreement, the clean power rules, and the gas mileage standards, is those are things that I could do in the first week on the job. I put this out on my Twitter feed the other day. Now you gotta always believe everything people write back, right? But someone wrote back, "That's completely a joke. You'd have to get the Senate to pass it." That's not true. And so we could sign ourselves back into that agreement. And then the other two things would be to, those other things are rules, so you could just put them out there. I'm sure there's comments, there could be lawsuits. Honestly, a lot of the business community thought those rules were going to go into effect anyway, and a lot of them have, bigger companies at least, have been preparing for them. I have a lot of small electric co-ops in my state, so I understand that issue, and that's why they did it sort of as an average for a state, so you could, not everyone had to meet it right away, and I think that they also have been realizing this is coming their way when you look at internationally some of the standards and things that are happening. But I think beyond that, yes, we have to look at a lot of things. Building standards going forward, to have more green infrastructure, transit standards, the electric grid, and putting money toward that. That's why my infrastructure proposal has major components of it for green infrastructure. You could look at renewable electricity standards, which have been very successful in some states. You probably have different ways of meeting them regionally. And there's just a number of things that are out there that have been just waiting for action that haven't happened as we look at how we're going to transition to a clean power economy and to move forward when it comes to reducing greenhouse gases. So I just think this is, before there was just not the political will to work on this. There's a lot of good ideas, but I think that is what's been missing. It's not the ideas. They are out there. And I think my view is when we had that vote, I voted for cap and trade, I was for it, but it was during the downturn. And I had wished that we would have at least done a national renewable electricity standard at the time. I actually had a bill for it, and at first that's what people were wanting to do, and then they decided to do cap and trade, and then it failed, sadly, in the Senate. And then we got nothing. We didn't even do renewable electricity standard that had almost passed the year before. So I just think the world has changed. People see it. It is not 100 years from now. It's happening right now. Anyone that has ever seen that video of that dad driving his little girl through the wildfires near Paradise, aptly named, and singing to her to calm her down as the flames are going over their car, leaving their house, burning behind them. It's not happening 100 years from now. It's happening now.
The gentleman in the back had his hand up. If you asked a quick question.
Yeah, quick.
Yeah, with our record deficits, I was wondering what type of tax proposals you might have.
That's a quick question. Okay, well, I will just, and maybe we can talk later, but I think that we do have to, for the reasons of the debt and the reasons of what I brought up with the income inequality and what's happening is hard, we have to make some changes, and some serious changes, because when you look at those debt commissions report, I was one of the group that withheld my vote on one of the budget debt increases 1 year, the debt limit, so we could get that report out, right, on the debt commission, which is this bipartisan group that put something together. I didn't agree with everything in it, but it was just left basically to gather dust on a shelf, as was the Rivlin diminishing, some of the other work that had been going on out there that just got left. And all of those proposals suggested a combination of spending decreases as well as some tax changes and increases. And that just has not been happening. In fact, we've gone the opposite way with the Republican tax bill that added $1 trillion to the debt that we did not need. And so I would start with some of those changes, which I already laid out on the corporate tax rate, the way they did international taxation. I would add to that capital gains, that we should be changing that. That's hundreds of billions of dollars. You'd probably want to have some way to reward people that are actually holding money for investment for the long term, but not the way it is now. The carried interest loophole brings in $14 billion, all kinds of things that we've been waiting to do, like immigration reform I mentioned, $158 billion. The changes on the oil giveaways, that brings in billions of dollars. So you just have to go through it and put together a package. And again, as to quote our friend Angus, took us 30 years to walk in this. It's going to take us 30 years to get out. So I promised I was going to end with my little story because it's a good, nice story besides taxes, although we are in New Hampshire. To end my story, and that is that when our daughter graduated from college a few years ago, the speaker was Theo Epstein, right, who'd been the Red Sox general manager and then went on to do the Cubs. And this is a good political ending for us all. And I actually was like, really? He's the speaker? It's not a, Twins fan. I'm like, okay. But then I got to know him a little bit, and he gave this most amazing speech. And to just summarize the focus, it was about the Cubs, that 7th game of the World Series. And how they were expected to win, and he's sitting next to his son, and his son is going, and it was such a big deal in Chicago after their 100-some-year drought of winning that literally people had radios on their ancestors' graves, okay, to play the game all over Chicago so that they could hear this. And so he's sitting there next to his son, and his son is going, the odds, Dad, the odds they're so great. They were ahead at the bit, so great, it's so great, we're going to win. And he keeps just saying his son to stop talking about the odds, you never know, you never know. And then the game just starts going to hell, and it's bad, and they've lost their lead, and they're going into the 7th inning, and then the clouds are coming in, and then there's a rain delay. And you just have this feeling watching the game that this is going bad, they're going to lose this thing. And then he talked about standing outside of the players' locker room, and he'd explained how it was the youngest team they'd ever had, the most diverse team they'd ever had. And he was speaking to a generation of young people about the promise of their generation. And so he said he looks in that room, and usually he says on rain delays, the players just look down at their phones, and they're just depressed, especially when they're losing. It's bad. But he said this one was different. The player with the very worst season leads the discussion. And they're all looking at each other, and they're talking about their season and how cool their team was, and that win or lose, this was a season like no other. And there's just this moment of hope where they're all looking at each other, and they go out there and they win that game. Now, he didn't put a political message on this, but I will. We can spend this next year looking down at our phones, not looking at each other, complaining about what's happening, whether it's the tariffs or the debt or the hatred that's out there, or we can decide to look at each other, even if we have some differences politically, even if we're in different political parties, and decide this is not the America that we want, and we can go out there as a team and win. Thank you.
Tote bag.
Oh, a tote bag.
With the zipper.
Oh my God.
We got a picture right here.
Tote bag.
We got a camera right here. Just want to thank the senator for being here, and we just gave her a politics and eggs tote bag. And Senator, what you should do with this is put all your husband's jokes in here and don't let them out again. Don't let them out. All right?
Great one. Oh, he just said it was all in the delivery. Nice.